Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about character consistency and how you as a traditional artist can keep that consistency while you're working. Now the materials that I'm using are the Caran d'Ache Sketch Blue Pencil, then I'm using watercolors. Well, not really watercolors, actually if you see here it's neocolors, but I'm using them as watercolors. And I'm also going ahead and gonna give the extra touch at the very end, which would be with a pearlescent ink. I found that it's more helpful to work in steps rather than in sections. So what do I mean by that? It's better to just do one step the whole way as I've done here. For every section, I do that one watercolor step of the little reddish tone. And then I'll move on and do another step versus doing the complete illustration for one character or even one part of the character and then going and trying to imitate that on the next character or the next orientation or design of the character. I feel that this also helps me work a little bit faster and more efficiently than if I were to do it the other way. And the reason for that is because I have to think a little bit less about what exactly I did before and try to imitate it. Here I'm just going over the fins and I'm just doing the base colors and just adding little shadows here and there with that same color. This actually happens to be a design of a character that I would like to work on a book for, and that book is a personal project that I have in mind. However, it's a little bit tricky just trying to do the character in watercolor and then deciding that no, I want to stick to gouache again, and I really don't want to do these characters over again in gouache. So I feel that I might try to either integrate it into the next background layer that I do or the next background, or if not, I would definitely have to scratch that and start all over and do it in gouache, which is unfortunate because I just think it looks gorgeous in watercolor and these neocolors. I just don't have the patience, the very patience that other people have to do a whole background in watercolor. As you can see here, I'm using a bit of an orange for the fins. I'm just trying to add a little bit of variation, but still stay in that set of colors to be exact, or that it's not complementary. I forgot the word for it, but yeah, I'll put it down. Anyways, I'm trying to stick to those colors, and then I will add a complementary color to it just to balance it out and give it a little more interest. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. I also put a little bit of the orange around the cheeks of the fish, and now I'm going with a little bit of red tint, a slightly darker one with a little bit of blue over to make sure that the little freckles come out a little better. The fins, however, I decided to do in a more of an orangey red little spotted look. To give a little bit of blending with the reds and the oranges, I'm using a little bit of a flesh tone color, and that's going to be around the fin areas and the back fins, which are the larger back fins of the fish. But yeah, and here you're going to see that I'm using a very light sky blue, and I'm using that to create a bit of shadow, but also because it's a complementary color and I just feel that it gives it a little bit of an oomph. I'm also adding a couple freckles a little bit further away from the cheeks, and that's just to kind of put everything together as far as the little spotted freckles around the nose of the fish. If that's a nose, a snout, I'm not really sure. But yeah, I'm just trying to kind of put everything cohesively. And in areas where there are corners like the ones that you see here in the fins, I try to use a darker shade of red and I blend it with water, solely water, a clean brush. I blend it in order to create that fine gradients. And that's the thing about watercolor, it's so wonderful to use in the sense that you can just gradiate everything easily, and it's just so easy to use that way. I might have to go back and try to do the background in watercolor again. That's gonna have to be for a different video, and the next video coming up is actually the background with gouache. So stick for that, and that's gouache and layered over, well, colored pencil layered over gouache. But yeah, I'm just looking at this video and I just think about it and I'm like, wow, I really enjoy the look of the watercolor. It's very stunning to me. I just need to be able to do this as well with the background. And I think I'm gonna practice a little bit with that, and that'll be for a later video where I do some background practicing, because honestly it's very soothing, it's very relaxing, and the it looks beautiful. It's just a little bit hard sometimes to deal with the patience that is required when you're doing watercolor. But yes, as you see here, I'm using one of the darker tones, a slight purplish red, in order to do the outlines of the fins, just to give it a little bit of oomph, and yeah, I'm using that only in the fin areas that are a little bit darker, because I don't want to just have like this stark line work. I like it to be a little bit soft. And even though sometimes I like to think that I have found my style and I'm gonna run with it, sometimes I look at this and I'm like, wow, should I really just like really try to give watercolor a chance? Because it's not only soothing to watch, but it was also very soothing to make. I also find that I do like the styles that are a little bit more bold, but they also require a lot more labor, and they are not as enjoyable sometimes as these. Now, just like I said before, I'm going with that fleshy tone over the larger fins in the back. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of line work on those fins as well with that color, but a little bit more concentrated and less watered down. And like you see, towards the tips, I add a more concentrated color and then use water to wash it down and blend it back to the areas, the other areas of the fish. When you're layering over watercolor, you want to make sure that the layer is completely dry. Otherwise, it'll become very easy to lift and undo all the work that you did in the previous layer. And as I work on finer details, I do like to switch up the areas and not work next to an area that's still wet, because the color will bleed through, and that is another mess that you don't want to deal with watercolor. But yeah, so make sure that each layer is dry when you put it on, and try working on layers separate from each other or not next to each other. That way you don't cause any bleeding to occur. Now, instead of using black directly, I did use a hint of blue on red. Well, it's a little bit more red, I'm sorry, more blue than red. And I use that for the pupils of the eyes and some slight areas that have a little bit of detail. And all of it is, again, to just be cohesive. So instead of just using black, which would make it stark, I decided to do that. Now here is where I tried to erase the sketch, and that was a big mistake. You're gonna see in the eye I smudged it, and I was like, no. But then I pulled out my gouache paint and I just kind of like went over it. I didn't worry too much because I'm gonna go ahead and do alterations to it digitally anyways, so it's not too much of a big deal. But I do want to keep it in my portfolio, you know, for later uses if somebody wants to see it physically. So I do, you know, want to try to cover that up a little bit. It didn't cover it the whole way, but I wasn't too concerned about it, so I just kept going. Then I made some final adjustments to the areas where I put the very light sky blue. And my favorite part of this is now when I'm going to pull out the pearlescent ink. I love this ink. And I'm going to do little dots to kind of implement these scales sort of thing. So I'm giving the illusion of scales without actually having to do each and every one of them. And this is the finished work. This is the watercolor piece for the fishes, and this is how you can create a consistent body of characters. So guys, see you on the next one. Keep painting. Bye.